Welcome everyone, and thank you for joining us for the SMPS Foundation webinar, Measuring for Success, a look at hit rates and other KPIs in the AEC industries. This is Natasha Musavi with the SMPS headquarters staff. Before we begin, I have a few housekeeping items to cover. On the right side of your screen, you'll see the GoToWebinar sidebar. You can click on the orange arrow to expand or minimize the side panel. There will be time for live Q&A during this program. Please type your questions into the chat box and then click the send button to submit. Today's program is being recorded and will be posted on the SMPS YouTube page at youtube.com/SMPSnational, and the full report will be available in the SMPS store free to members at smps.org. It is now my pleasure to introduce our presenters for today, Holly Bolton and Michelle Yates. Holly, welcome to the program, and the audience is yours.
Thanks, Natasha. This is Holly, and I really appreciate everyone joining us today for today's webinar on hit rates and other key performance indicators. As we wind down 2016, a lot of us are probably thinking about 2017 and those positive changes that we all want to make. And at the office, that means looking at how we can improve performance at our firms as we start implementing our plans for the coming year. I'm Holly Bolton, along with Michelle Yates, and Michelle and I, we have a few things in common. We're both directors of marketing at our firms. We both served as SMPS president for our chapters, and we're both volunteers for the SMPS Foundation. And my position is treasurer and past president, and Michelle is chair of our Informed Strategies Committee. So we're looking forward to providing some highlights from soon-to-be released SMPS Foundation research. I hope it's helpful to you as you think about those metrics that you'll be using to gauge your firm's performance and improvements over the next 12 months. So to give you a preview of our agenda today, first we're going to talk about the background of the project and kind of how we got to this point. Then we're going to share some results with you up from the research project and talk about effectiveness of hit rates. And then we're going to talk about how you can apply this research at your firm and give you some tips on that. So let's start out with the background. For those of you who aren't familiar with the SMPS Foundation, the SMPS Foundation is a 501c3 nonprofit organization that was established by SMPS, and we really exist to conduct research for the AEC industries and really to find out what makes our firm successful in marketing and business development. So one of the ways that we do that is through our Informed Strategies Committee. And this committee manages our current research projects and the resulting reports. And really, the name of this committee says it all, because the reports are intended to help inform the marketing and business development strategies that we use at our firms. One of the goals that the SMPS Foundation set in 2015 was to increase the involvement of third-party research entities in our projects. And so the Informed Strategies Committee started brainstorming how we do that. And it was really interesting because Michelle, she brought up a great idea related to her alma mater, Southern Illinois University, Edwardsville. This university has a top market research program, and it has a graduate level marketing research course where students lead research projects for their class. So we decided to team with them and pursue a joint research project, both to help these students in their coursework and also to involve a third-party entity in our research process. So we worked closely with these students and their advisor, and Michelle was really the person who shepherded this process and authored the resulting report. So the Informed Strategies Committee opted to explore the topic of hit rates and other key performance indicators because in this industry, hit rates and metrics of success are always a hot topic. And it's a pretty complex one too, because the way that they are tracked, it varies from firm to firm. So we wanted to explore those processes that firms use to track their success. So our overall research questions included, how do companies in the AEC industry track their success winning projects? And then how is their hit rate metric used to improve future performance? What do they do with that data? And then lastly, apart from hit rate, what other KPIs are firms using? So this was a pretty robust research process, and for those of you on the line who are certified professional services marketers, you probably are familiar with the terminology of secondary and primary research and qualitative and quantitative data. But secondary research, the students started by exploring what content was out there already on hit rates, both to help inform the process, but also to get them familiar with the concepts and with our industry. Then they conducted primary research, and I talked earlier about how one of the goals of the SMPS Foundation was to increase third-party involvement. We also wanted to focus more on conducting primary research, original research. So the students started by talking with 16 SMPS members, representing a good mix from the industry, to help inform the resulting quantitative research that they would do. Then they conducted the quantitative research, so that was in the form of an electronic survey that was shared, and 33 respondents participated in that. Then after that was conducted, the students interviewed 7 additional respondents to get more qualitative data for our study. So it was, like I mentioned, a pretty robust process, and the respondents represented a mix of architecture, engineering, and construction firms, as well as other specialty firms. And it did have a larger percentage of engineering firms that responded to the survey. So that's kind of a background about how we got to this point and how the research was structured and set up. And now I'm going to turn it over to Michelle Yates, who's going to share the results with you.
Thank you so much, Holly, and hello, everybody. Thanks so much for joining us today. This has been a really exciting project for me personally, and it has taken a village to make it happen. So I do want to give just a quick shout out to the other members of the Informed Strategies Committee who took time to review and edit the drafts, and then also to the Content Committee who really put everything into this nice format you're going to see that's downloadable. And of course, National SMPS, who has been with us along the way and helped us promote it and everything like that. So thank you, thank you, thank you. So just to get us started in talking about the results, I thought we could ask everybody in the call the first question about hit rates that we asked our survey participants, and that was, are you familiar with or have firsthand knowledge of how your company tracks their hit rate? So if we could just take a quick poll here and see what results are from our folks on the phone.
And the results are coming in.
Great, so 72% are tracking, wonderful, 20% no, and 8% not sure. And that's not too far away from where we did end up in our survey, which was 85%. And Holly, am I able to advance that slide? If you could go ahead and advance it for me, for some reason it's not letting me do that.
There you go. Sorry about that.
No problem. Thanks. So anyway, 85% of folks said they're familiar with tracking hit rates. And basically, if they answered yes, they went to one set of questions to get more detail about that. And if they said no, they went to other questions to see what other things they were tracking. And another question we included in our survey was what's included in your hit rate metric. And so I wanted to poll the audience here and see what your answers might be.
And the results are coming in for this one.
Great. So this is interesting, a little bit different than our results. Looks like we got 63% fee proposals, 86% qualification based. And if we look at the results that we got from the survey, You can show us that slide. Thanks. You'll see we had actually a little bit different with 87% tracking fee proposals and only 78% tracking qualifications. And then we had 49% tracking letter proposals. And we also asked folks how often they were calculating hit rates. And then we heard that it was about 33% monthly, 33% quarterly, and there was only about 19% that were tracking annually, which was kind of surprising, and then 7% were tracking weekly. And when we first started talking about this research project, I really thought everybody was tracking it the same way I did, but that did not happen to be true. So as you can see, everybody's doing things a little bit differently, and that's one of the barriers to the benchmark standard is that we're all doing things a little differently. So let's look at how the audience is tracking hit rates. What method are you using? Great, so 93% number of proposals, and that is very much in line with our poll. Let's see. A lot more people on the phone are tracking a number of shortlisted, which is interesting. So in our survey, we had 92%, very close to folks on the phone, are using the number submitted to the number of projects won, and that's really just the easiest thing to do. Then there was a big drop, only 38% using the dollar value, 33% shortlisted, number shortlisted, and then dollar value shortlisted, and then a few folks using other methods. I will say that more than half of the folks that responded are using more than one method to calculate hit rates. And then we have one last poll question for you about average hit rates. Let's see what your answers are there. Great, so 53% looks like the highest between 25 and 49. That's about, sounds about like 2% at 75 to 100%. I wish I was in that category, but great. Let's see how that compares to our survey results. So in the survey, the overall average was 42%, and as you can see, engineering was at the highest at 44, then architecture, and then construction. And this is also similar to wide groups who shared their 2016 survey. That showed an average of 41% overall. And PSMJ's 2015 survey was a little higher with an average of almost 50%. And those stats are in the report as well. So we also wanted to find out what other firms were tracking besides hit rates. And this is a list of some of the general comments we got back. We kind of summarized it, edited it, put it into a little more legible format. And there was more than 200 comments on this question, and actually about 50 people saying none or not applicable, which was pretty surprising. But there were several answers that came up multiple times, and I just highlighted a few of those, which were backlog, profitability, repeat clients, and staff utilization too.
This is a great list of KPIs, Michelle, and I think that it's helpful to kind of look at it and say, okay, what are our goals as a company strategically, and then what are those metrics that are going to help us gauge where we're at. And, you know, one of the things I noticed that was circled was repeat clients, and we think about kind of the average rate of repeat business at firms is around 80%, kind of hovers around that amount industry average-wise. And we all know that it costs so much more to retain a new client versus, or it costs more to to get a new client than retain an existing one. So client satisfaction is one of the metrics on here. And so when you're thinking about that, that's a good one to consider as well.
That's so true. And these are all also in the report. So, I mean, maybe you can look through and see, is there anything that looks interesting to you that you're not already tracking as well? And so we also looked at how effective people thought their hit rate was. And basically, it's definitely a subjective question, and we measured the responses on a scale of 1 to 10. And so anything 7 and above was considered effective. And so with that, we had results at 64% that perceived their hit rate as effective. And these are just a few of the general comments we got when we asked people why they track their hit rates a certain way. Several just said because it's easy, or that's just the way it's always been done. And when we asked about its effectiveness, there were mixed comments. Some firms are using it to improve, and some don't really. They do it, but they don't talk about it. And not surprisingly, firms who tracked hit rate by using multiple methods tended to rate their effectiveness higher than those that don't. These are just a few more of the general comments. Some people disregarding it, the hit rate, and then some are very aware and using it to make changes as well. And I think we have one other comment there. One respondent said that even though the rest of the staff doesn't seem concerned, tracking our hit rates through the marketing has increased their awareness of what seems to be successful or not successful. They're trying to use that information wisely, even if nobody else seems to be too interested in it. And then the last thing we kind of talked about was application. And so we looked at the ways that firms are measuring success. And in this next slide, you can see that most firms are using it to inform the go, no-go process at 93%. And then others for the proposal process and 54% at the interview process. And then some of the comments we received about measuring success, just some general comments about, we review what was successful and try to continue those best practices. We evaluate the strategy and use it from initial client contact to winning or losing the job. And then a few other comments we had were they use it to inform the BD process and using it to evaluate client, market, and project selection. And it allows them to dig in deeper discussions with clients. And that's a lot of what this is about is, the hit rate is one metric, but how can we take that metric and dig deeper to find out more so that we can use that to improve our firms. And then we just wanted to give a few ideas for starting simple. So, if you're not tracking anything right now, just pick one market and go back as far as you can for any historic data and track it monthly, then review it, look at patterns, and see where you can try to make some improvements. And I think, if you don't have access to that information, which some folks don't, I would just track your personal hit rate. I think of lawyers who have that 100% win rate kind of thing. How great would it be to say, every proposal I work on has this high hit rate. Then some other ideas for tracking, if you're already tracking but you're not really using the information, is to just, start right now to document the current hit rate as a benchmark. And then if you're tracking by different markets, take the lowest one and dig deeper into the project's loss versus won. And that might include looking at some criteria to review, like was there a go, no-go? Did you get shortlisted? Did you have a previous relationship? How far in advance did you know about the project? And then try to find any patterns. So, for example, did you lose 90% of the projects when you didn't know at least 3 months in advance about the project? And, I think that's information definitely that firm managers want to hear, and it gives you a little bit of credibility to say, hey, why are we going after this when we're losing this all the time kind of a thing, which to help that go, no-go process. And then review hit rates by market quarterly and, share the results. And, I think it just brings a higher level of credibility to marketing folks when we can keep track of these kinds of numbers, and especially if you have a lot of coworkers that are data-driven and they like to see the stats on things. I think it really adds value. And then also just, comparing apples to apples, that was one of the things that kind of frustrates me, is that we're just not looking at exactly the same thing. So, document standard language what type of submittals are you doing, what are you going to include. Even when a project is claimed as a win, we had a lot of differences in how people track that. And, you know, get everybody on the same page. So this can, I think, really make a difference if people aren't comparing apples to apples. And so just for example, if you, what if your healthcare practice is including non-competitive work in their hit rate? Well, that's going to look a lot better than maybe your higher ed practice's hit rate because they don't include that. So, I mean, maybe everybody's on the same page, but it doesn't hurt to just make sure and document it so that the next folks that come down the line can have that historic data that's comparable to what they're tracking in the future. And some folks have, you know, CRMs that track a lot of this and probably take out some of that, some of those variables, but even those, I think, things can be done differently as well. And then another thing to consider is just segmenting the data, and this goes back to that digging deeper into the information. You know, this shows some of the ways firms are detailing that out. So a lot of people are doing it by market sector, and then there's other ways. And you know, some I didn't even think of, like teaming partners, as Holly mentioned, repeat versus new clients. You know, just a lot of different ways to do that. And you can just imagine how impactful that is to be able to change something in the future if you know down to this level where you have the highest and lowest hit rates. And then finally, as with everything that we have in marketing, really, just evaluate and refine. So this, again, goes back to just digging deeper into the story and trying to pinpoint why you lost a project, and then making changes, refining your strategy, and then evaluating again. And these are just a list of some of the questions, you know, you might want to look into, like, is the go-no-go process being followed? Are specific team members having difficulty closing deals? You know, do you get to the interview and then lose it? Do you even get to the interview? All those things can kind of help dig deeper to see if you can try to improve that hit rate for your company. Holly, I'm going to turn it right back over to you.
Great. Well, thank you, Michelle. You know, this quote from the research really demonstrates the importance of looking at our hit rates and what factors affect them. And I know that this research has been very helpful and motivating for me personally, and I hope it has been for everyone who's on the webinar today as you look forward to making those New Year's resolutions at your firm. So we gave you just some of the highlights today, but right after this webinar concludes, you'll be able to download the report in its entirety by visiting the SMPS website. You'll need to go through the store to download it, since there is a fee if you're not a member, but if you're an SMPS member, it is free to you. You just have to add it to your shopping cart and check out, and you'll get an email to download it, or it will be in your download section. So be sure to check that out and review it and apply it. The SMPS Foundation can work on these projects because of the donations that we receive, and we have future projects, research projects that are in the works in line with our mission. So I hope that everyone will consider a tax-deductible donation to the foundation during your holiday giving this year. Speaking of giving, I want to give some more kudos out to our content committee. When you download this report, you'll see all the great graphics and the nice look and feel that this report has. They've worked extremely hard to give the foundation's deliverables a fresh and current look, and I'm extremely proud of their work. So thank you to the Content Committee. Thank you to the Informed Strategies Committee and all SMPS Foundation volunteers and donors. And thank you, Michelle, for leading this research project for us. I'm really excited about sharing it with everyone. So at this time, we'd like to open it up to questions. So Natasha, do we have any questions coming in?
We do. Thank you. We have a very active audience today. We'll go ahead and take our first question. Does this mean that the hit rate data includes sole source opportunities or only competitive pursuits?
So it does include both, and so the metrics that you see could be either. The only thing that we've broken out is how many firms did that, but it doesn't necessarily, we don't break that out by each competitive resource's average hit rate. So the average hit rate combines both.
All right, sounds good. We'll take our next question. The next question is, has SMPS set a baseline for marketing professionals to measure effectiveness by, for AEC companies? So to measure effectiveness.
Yeah, I'm sorry, can you repeat that again?
Sure, absolutely. The question is, has SMPS set a baseline for marketing professionals to measure effectiveness for AEC companies? And they said it would be helpful since we're all measuring differently.
Yeah, you know, that is something.
Sorry, go ahead, Holly.
Yeah, I was just going to say it's a great suggestion, and that's, you know, that's something that our committee kind of talked about is, you know, in the future, is this something that we could explore more if it seems like it's in need? Because as Michelle mentioned, you know, we are all measuring things differently, and so we can look at the percentage and it can be helpful, but it's based on different things. So I'm not aware of any specific initiatives right now that SMPS is pursuing related to that, but it's certainly something that, that we can have dialogue about.
Sounds great. We'll take our next question. This one says, can you review the hit rate formula? Is it still accurate if we entirely remove the canceled withdrawn opportunities from the calculation?
So I think what you find is that, again, everybody's doing it a little bit differently. So the methods, I think you're asking about the methods people are using, which is the ones that we had most prevalent were the number of proposals submitted versus the number one. And then from there it went to the dollar value, and then the number shortlisted and the dollar value shortlisted. And within those, I think everybody are still using some different things. So I think your question is if you're taking things out of it. So let's say you have, just for example sake, 100 projects that you went after and you won 50 of them, 10 of them didn't happen. You know, personally, I think I include those in the full count, but as to what other firms are doing, I think we are all doing things a little bit different. Does that answer that question?
Absolutely. Sounds about right. And then, yeah, audience member, if you feel free to type back in, and we can get you some more details on that if you need more. All right, so we'll take our next question. Who sets the standards for hit rates within their firms, specifically by the project manager or the principal in charge?
I'm not sure that anybody really sets the standard. I guess it's a tough question because, you know, a lot of the answers were, how are you doing it or why are you doing it? And the answer is because it's always been done this way. So who can follow that trail from 20 years ago as to who really set the policy? But I do think, you know, marketing can play a key role in that, and also CRMs have a lot of that data. If you have those kinds of things, and they do just in their own CRM, I think can set those as well. So I think it's a, you know, a conversation probably, but a lot of firms may not even know who originally set those.
And that question also had a part two. They were asking, should we set standards?
Personally, I think we should set standards. I think just getting everybody on the same page, you know, having just a piece of paper that says, this is what we're calculating, this is what's included, this is not included, just helps everybody get on the same page. And, you know, if marketing can help do that, I think it's great.
Yeah, and I think, Michelle, you had mentioned, we were talking an example of, like, if you have two different market sectors within your firm, and one of them is calculating hit rate and including maybe some of those projects that died or whatever, and then another another segment isn't, then it's like it's going to make the other market segment data look a lot better because of what they're not including. So, you know, getting on the same page internally and then tracking that data over time is I think where the consistency should start.
Sounds great. We'll take our next question. Is the hit rate calculation as simple as the number of submitted and the number of wins, or are there more complex equations that are commonly used?
That was the one that most people were tracking, and I think it's just because it's the easiest thing to do. But some people were tracking the dollar value, so like your net fee, what your net fee would be if you won the project. And then some were going as far as breaking that down into shortlisted, whether the number shortlisted or the dollar value of shortlisted. And there was only 8% of people that were doing it a different way. And I don't think we really delved into that 8% of how else people might be calculating that.
All right, we'll take our next question. How did the firm surveyed assign the value to the qualification-based proposals when measuring the hit rate by value?
I'm sorry, say that again?
The question is, how did the firms surveyed assign the value to the qualification-based proposals when measuring the hit rate? This is the question for value. So how did the firm surveyed assign the value to the qualification-based proposals when measuring the hit rate by value?
I think you're asking, and feel free to type back in if this isn't what you meant, but I think you're asking about the dollar value. How are people assigning that? And I don't think we got into too much detail, but I believe on the survey we did say sort of in parentheses proposed fees. So if you have a construction cost and you can break down what your fee might be from that, that would be the dollar value. And if that's not what you were asking exactly, please feel free to type back in.
Sounds good. Our next question is, how are people tracking hit rates and pursuits in the AEC industry? Are they using a CRM, or what do you suggest is the best way?
We didn't ask people how they were doing, sort of what tools they were using, but I do know a lot of people are using CRMs, and actually saw some dashboards that they have, Deltek and Cosential and CRMs like that, where it, calculates all this data for you. But I think, too, a lot of firms, Excel spreadsheets and things like that are still prevalent. I don't know if you have any other thoughts on how firms might be doing that, Holly?
That's kind of is consistent with that. It can be as sophisticated as a CRM, or kind of depending on what all you're tracking, it could be, yeah, just keeping track on your Excel sheet of what you won and what you lost, and then doing that division to get your percentage. So I think you can, depending on kind of what you're looking for, you can take it as far as you want, but there's a lot of options there.
All right, we'll take our next question. My firm tracks proposals for term contracts separately from a direct project win. What is your thought on pulling out term contracts versus the projects? We felt that when a specific project was won, it wasn't helpful in understanding our hit rate.
By term contracts, are you referring to like IDIQs or rotation lists?
Let's just give it a second. Chris can clarify that. He says, yes, IDIQs and the like.
Gotcha. So again, all firms are doing it differently. I can tell you personally that we do track IDIQs in the win rate, giving sort of a number of what, with the proposed fee of what that might be over that period. But, you know, we do put them in there because it is a competitive thing and it is something that you're selected for. But other firms may not. So again, it is definitely varies between different firms.
Sounds great. We'll take our next question from Christy. She's asking, how many proposals on average do companies do? I'm not sure if she's measuring that, you know, annually. So feel free to, perhaps we'll dive into annually. Yep, she says annually here.
Great question, and we did ask that. So let me, if you give me just a second to look for that, and if you want to go ahead with the next question while I look, that would be great.
Absolutely, sounds good. So Carrie's asking, she would love to know more about how firms are measuring brand impressions. Do you have any suggestions?
That is a good topic. We didn't really look into that. I mean, it was mostly around the actual hit rates related to pursuits. But in looking at other key performance indicators, you know, brand impressions is certainly something to look at, and there's different ways to do that. So we didn't really dive into that, but that's a good suggestion for kind of future content. You know, just kind of speaking personally, for things like perception surveys, doing perception surveys prior to a campaign and then doing another one after the campaign's over to, you know, gauge if perceptions of the company have changed. There's also kind of the more analytic side of it on, you know, how often you're mentioned and you know, some of those web analytics and things like that. But that's a great topic that probably deserves kind of a standalone initiative to look into that a little bit more. So, interesting question.
Thanks, Holly. Okay, so back to the other question. We do have this in the report as well, but 50% of firms were submitting more than 10 proposals per month, and 15% were submitting more than 50 proposals per month. And then we also included a Zweig Group stat that said that fast growth firms submitted an average of 507 proposals for the year, while the overall average was 332. But, you know, one thing to keep in mind with our results is that we are looking at firms across the nation who are of varying sizes and varying types. So, you know, you kind of have to take that understanding that who was responding to the survey too. I hope that helps.
Absolutely. All right, we'll take our next question from Amy. She says, in your research, did you address if firms count on-call contracts as one win or multiple wins?
So in the online survey, we did not ask that question. I personally, I would call it as a one win. But we didn't get to that level of detail. We didn't ask if they were breaking that down into more than one in our survey.
Sounds good. Our next question comes from Kelsey. She's asking, what are your thoughts on included open or pending opportunities in the overall hit rate percentage?
Including open or pending in the hit rate. So we didn't ask anything about that about the survey, but you know, personally, I think you have to leave those set aside. So you're looking at how many you won versus how many you actually have a decision on. So if you don't have a decision yet, I think that doesn't go into the count. Do you think that's true, Holly, or do you have any different?
Yeah, I would agree with that because you're really looking at what the outcome was, and if it's still in process, you know, you're not going to know if it's a win or a loss. So, you know, I don't know that I would include that that metric in there.
All right, we'll take our next question from Amanda. She says that we track proposals by win, loss, and canceled. To get the true hit rate, should we remove the canceled opportunities and then just look at the win-loss? And how would canceled proposals factor into the hit rate, if at all?
I think that's a great question. I don't think anybody really has the answer to that. I think it varies by firm. So, you know, if the client cancels the project, you know, in some ways it's helpful to include that because you did spend the effort and the time and you didn't get the award. But on the other hand, you know, you didn't have anything to do with that necessarily. So I think that's a personal call that firms are making, and I don't, it just would vary, I think.
Yeah, and I think, again, this isn't related to the research, and this certainly isn't a official official take on it. It's just kind of Michelle and I's our opinions on that. But in terms of my personal opinion related to that, you know, what are you trying to achieve with understanding your hit rate? And it kind of goes back to what we were talking about, like how are firms using the hit rate metrics to improve their performance? So kind of understanding what your end game is and what you might change because of your hit rate, I think can drive what you include in that or not. And so if you're looking at, well, how can we be more competitive and what things can we, what different things are we tracking, what are those leading indicators that affect our hit rate? It seems to me like a project that died or went away or was canceled and the firm didn't have anything to do with that, would alter your percentage and it might not give you an accurate representation of your success. So that's my personal Holly Bolton opinion with that, but I think that with anything that we do and measure, it's like what is the purpose? You know, we're doing this for the purpose of what, and then that'll kind of drive what you include.
Great, and we'll just take a couple more questions at this time before we wrap up. The next question is, what is your definition of fee proposals? Usually we have qualification based only or a combo of qualifications and fees. Would you track both of those things? So the definition of fee proposals. Sorry.
Oh, no, that's fine. Yeah, so I don't know that we put any definitions in our survey questions, but by breaking it out by fee proposal and then qualifications, I think, you know, we were assuming there that qualifications did not include fee, and then you had things that did include fee. So I don't know if that answers your question, but we didn't really break it down much farther than that, I don't think.
Great, and we'll just take one more question. As a subconsultant, we are often pursuing a project and on multiple architecture teams. How would you recommend tracking that as a win or loss?
That's a great question. Actually, that came up in several comments about, you know, how subconsultants feel like they don't have much input into their hit rate because a lot of times it depends on the prime firms and their experience. So, you know, personally, my suggestion would be to, if you can track them both, it's good to know which teaming partners you're winning with and which you aren't, and to see, then break down that data to say, hey, you know, is there something we need to do differently when we partner with this team, or should we be partnering with another team? So I think it was definitely a consideration of a lot of folks that took the survey and wondering, you know, how accurate their hit rate could be when it depends on something like that.
Sounds great. Thank you, Holly and Michelle. We still have a few questions. What we'll do is go ahead and feel free to reach out to them directly. We will actually follow up. We can also follow up with the attendees as well if you want to follow up as well. All right, so that concludes our online program. On behalf of SMPS, thank you to our presenters, Holly Bolton and Michelle Yates, and all of today's participants. The program has been recorded and will be posted to the SMPS YouTube page at youtube.com/SMPSnational, and the full report is available at smps.org, free to members. The program has now ended, and you may disconnect.